Can you solve all these chemical equilibrium questions? Decreasing volume.
Great thinking. Increases pressure is the right choice.
Substances that are studied.
Sharp thinking. Substance is the right choice.
If Kasichua won, then the reaction. Correct response. Moves in forward direction is the most accurate answer.
Can be felt by all 5 senses.
Right choice. Matter is the best answer.
An ice table consists of dash. Well done. Initial change equilibrium is the right choice.
Equilibrium is divided into dash.
Well picked. 2 is the correct answer.
The equilibrium law, also known as.
Correct. Law of mass action is the right answer.
A very high value for K indicates that.
Smart move. Products are favored is an accurate answer. Equilibrium is only achievable in a van. Bravo. Closed system is the answer.
When does a system achieves equilibrium?
Excellent. Kc equal to Qc is a brilliant choice. A solution that is at equilibrium must be. Excellent choice. Saturated is the right answer. The equilibrium constant is represented as. Well reasoned. Kc is the correct choice. Equilibrium reactions are also called dash.
Nice selection. Reversible reaction is the correct and valid answer.
What happens to the majority of reactions?
You got it? Your choice state of equilibrium is right.
In the equilibrium expression, K represents. Good thinking. The equilibrium constant is the right answer. Equilibrium constants typically have units of. Perfect. None of the above is the correct choice.
What types of equilibrium did we learn today? Smart pick. Mechanical, thermal, chemical is the correct choice.
Unit of equilibrium constant for H2 plus a 2-tie is. Nice work. You chose no units, and it is correct.
What is the equilibrium concentration of X2 gas?
Exactly, Zhu. Makes sense, and it is right choice.
What does Chi-P involve in equilibrium expressions?
Nicely done. Pressures is a solid answer. What are the factors that can affect equilibrium? Great job. Temperature, pressure, concentration is the accurate answer. An equilibrium that strongly favors products has a solid response. A value of Kwang is a valid choice. At equilibrium, which of the following is constant?
Strong choice. A and B is the right answer.
Equilibrium will shift to the right forward. When?
Valid point. Add a reactant is true.
What is the majority outcome of chemical reactions? Clear logic. Your choice state of equilibrium is sound and 100% true.
Dynamic. Chemical equilibrium can only occur in an.
Good job. Closed system works well here. Below are the factors that affect equilibrium except. You chose catalyst, and it is correct.
The value of equilibrium constant Kc depends only on track. Temperature is the correct answer.
Which of the followings is a homogeneous equilibrium? You're right. Esterification is the correct answer.
The symbol of equilibrium constant of concentration is Il.
Right again. KC is a valid answer.
Which of the following will not affect the equilibrium?
Solid response. Adding a catalyst is a valid choice.
The factors that affect a system at equilibrium except.
Sharp thinking. Mass is the right choice.
The value of any equilibrium constant is correct only at.
Correct response. A specific temperature is the most accurate answer.
Which of the following changes the equilibrium constant?
Clear logic. Your choice temperature is sound and 100% true.
The factors that influence chemical equilibrium are dash.
Excellent. Catalysis and reactions is a brilliant choice.
Who was the scientist who discussed changes in equilibrium?
On track. The Chatelier is the correct answer.
The equilibrium constant changes only when it is disturbed.
Nice work. You chose heat, and it is correct.
Which factor will affect the change in the equilibrium constant?
Excellent choice. Temperature is the right answer.
The energy change during a chemical reaction is known as dash.
Correct. Heat of reaction is the right answer.
At equilibrium, the concentration of the reacting species are.
Right again. Remain constant is a valid answer.
If the equilibrium constant is greater than 1, then.
Strong choice. Equilibrium favors products is the right answer.
The following factors affect the position of equilibrium except.
Great thinking. State of matter is the right choice.
Which of the following is not a way to stress a chemical system?
Smart pick. Time is the correct choice.
When two reactions are add, then their equilibrium constants are.
Valid point. Multiplied is true.
What does the equilibrium constant tell you about a reaction?
Nicely done. Both is a solid answer.
What is the color of X2 gas in the hypothetical chemical reaction?
Exactly. Reddish-brown makes sense, and it is right choice.
Chemical reactions that continue in both directions are called dash.
You're right. Reversible reactions is the correct answer.
Equilibria in which all substances are in the same phases are called.
Good job. Homogeneous equilibria works well here.
At dash, opposing processes occur at the same time and the same rate.
Smart move. Equilibrium is an accurate answer.
What principle accounts for the equilibrium disturbance of a system?
Right choice. The Chatelier is the best answer.
Study of reactions, composition, structure, and properties of matter.
Bravo. Chemical is the answer.
The role of a catalyst in a chemical reaction is to increase the dash.
Good thinking. Rate of the reaction is the right answer.
Which factor does affect the equilibrium constant for a reaction?
Great job. Temperature is the accurate answer.
The equilibrium established between the two different phases is called.
Well done. Heterogeneous equilibrium is the right choice. If dash, the reaction favors dash, products predominate at equilibrium.
Perfect. Case 1 products is the correct choice.
What is the equilibrium between two phases of the same substance called?
G.
You got it. Your choice physical equilibrium is right. Heterogeneous equilibrium is the reaction in which the reacting species in.
Well picked. Different physical state is the correct answer.
Which of the following solutions is not added to the chemical equilibrium? Nice selection. Concentrated CT4 is the correct and valid answer. Which of the following factors does not affect the change in equilibrium? Well reasoned. Catalysts and retarders is the correct choice. Which of the following is not a factor that affects chemical equilibrium? You chose catalyst, and it is correct. The point at which solid, vapor, and liquid are at equilibrium is called. Correct. Triple point is the right answer. If dash, the reaction favors reactants dash predominate at equilibrium. Well picked. K1 reactants is the correct answer. If a system reaches chemical equilibrium, there will be no change in dash. You chose concentration, and it is correct. An equilibrium constant with a large value, e.g. Kc equal to 1000, indicates dash. Nicely done. Mostly products at equilibrium is a solid answer. What is the state in which there are no observable changes as time goes by? Good thinking. Dynamic equilibrium is the right answer. Equilibrium, where two or more phases are present in the reaction, is known as.
Good job. Heterogeneous equilibrium works well here.
Which substance at equilibrium is likely to have the highest concentration? Nice work. You chose 3Cu, and it is correct. Which of the following concentration affects the rate of a chemical reaction? Well done. Regia is the right choice. During equilibrium, the rates of the forward and the reverse reaction are dash. Bravo, equal is the answer. A state in which all the reactants and products are in the same physical state. Right again. Homogeneous equilibrium is a valid answer. Which of the following is incorrect? A dynamic equilibrium can be achieved dash.
Smart pick. In an open system is the correct choice.
Which of the following factors will affect the value of equilibrium constant? Key. Great thinking. Temperature is the right choice. What is the color of individual atoms of X in the hypothetical chemical reaction? You're right. Colorless is the correct answer. Type of acid for which the value of the equilibrium constant, Ka, is less than 1. Right choice.
Weak is the best answer.
A chemical reaction that can proceed in both the forward and backward directions. Nice selection. Reversible reaction is the correct and valid answer. Which term describes chemical reactions in which products can reform to reactants?
Well reasoned. Reversible reactions is the correct choice.
What is the outcome when the reactants are not all consumed in a chemical reaction? Excellent choice. Less than predicted products is the right answer. heat is added to an exothermic reaction. Which direction will the equilibrium shift?
Solid response. Left is a valid choice.
Which one of the following changes has no effect on the position of the equilibrium?
You got it. Your choice addition of a catalyst is right.
Discuss the factors that can affect the equilibrium position of a chemical reaction.
Perfect. Temperature, pressure, concentration, catalysts is the correct choice.
A chemical reaction in which products can react to reform reactants is known as a
On track. Reversible reaction is the correct answer.
For any reaction at chemical equilibrium, the concentrations of products and reactants.
Great job. Remain unchanged is the accurate answer.
During equilibrium, the amount of the products and the amount of the reactants are dash.
Excellent. Constant is a brilliant choice. The expression for calculating the equilibrium constant of the general reaction is. Exactly. Dash makes sense and it is right choice.
What happens to the equilibrium position of an exothermic reaction when you remove heat?
Sharp thinking. Shifts to the right is the right choice.
A reaction that can occur in both the forward and the reverse directions is called what?
Clear logic. Your choice reversible reaction is sound and 100% true.
At equilibrium, the rate of the forward reaction is dash the rate of the reverse reaction.
Strong choice. Equal to is the right answer.
What can affect the magnitude of equilibrium constant P of a reversible gaseous reaction?
Correct response. Temperature is the most accurate answer.
A dash is a chemical reaction that can occur in both the forward and the reverse direction.
Valid point. Reversible reaction is true.
It is a chemical reaction where the reactants form products and the products form reactants.
Smart move. Reversible reaction is an accurate answer.
A substance that increases speed of chemical reaction without being changed is called.
Great thinking. Catalyst is the right choice.
When writing the expression for an equilibrium constant, which type of substance is included?
Right choice. Gases is the best answer.
What is the equilibrium partial pressure of Cockle 2 after the reaction has reached equilibrium?
E. Smart move 113 tam is an accurate answer. What is the reason for obtaining less than 2 mol of ammonia in the ammonia-producing reaction? Valid point. State of equilibrium is true.
What is the value of K when equilibrium favors the products and equilibrium lies to the right?
Excellent. K1 is a brilliant choice.
The 3 factors that affect the equilibrium of a reaction are temperature, pressure, and dash.
Nice work. You chose concentration, and it is correct.
The equilibrium constant Kc of a reversible reaction depends on which of the following factors?
Correct. Temperature is the right answer.
For an endothermic reaction, how does an increase in temperature affect the equilibrium position?
Great job. Shifts to the right is the accurate answer.
If the value of the equilibrium constant is large, then at equilibrium mostly dash will be present. Well picked. Products is the correct answer. Which term is used to describe equilibrium between different substances as reactants and products?
On track. Chemical equilibrium is the correct answer.
When considerable concentrations of both products and reactants are present at equilibrium. Keck is. Good job. Roughly 1 works well here. What is the equilibrium concentration of 8 after the system reaches equilibrium in the example? You got it? Your choice 5.056 mem is right. When a reversible reaction reaches equilibrium, the concentration of reactants and products are dash. You're right. Remains constant is the correct answer. When the forward and reverse reactions are occurring at the same rate, the reaction is said to be at.
Well reasoned. Chemical equilibrium is the correct choice.
Which refers to a condition in which 2 processes occur at the same rate, resulting in no net change.
Bravo. Equilibrium is the answer.
Which of the following is true when the reaction proceeds toward equilibrium in the reverse direction? Well done. Reactant concentrations increases is the right choice. Which of the following factors has no effect on the position of the chemical equilibrium for a reaction?
Sharp thinking. Catalyst is the right choice.
For a chemical reaction, which of the following will cause the value of its equilibrium constant to change? Right again. Changing the temperature is a valid answer.
Equilibrium reaction in which all the reactants and products are in the same physical state is called what?
Good thinking. Homogeneous equilibrium is the right answer. If equilibrium constant for a forward reaction is 10, then equilibrium constant for the backward reaction is. Correct response. Fuck 10 is the most accurate answer. What law states that? At a given temperature, the reaction quotient for a system at equilibrium is constant.
Strong choice. Law of mass action is the right answer.
When the reactants and products are present in more than one physical state, the equilibrium is called a dash. Smart pick. Heterogeneous equilibrium is the correct choice. For a reversible reaction, if the concentrations of the reactants are doubled, the equilibrium constant will be. Exactly. The same makes sense, and it is right choice. The concentration pressure of a dash and dash are not included in the equilibrium constant expression, Kc and Kp. Excellent choice. Solid, liquid is the right answer. An exothermic reaction is allowed to reach equilibrium. If heat energy is then removed, the equilibrium will shift.
Nice selection. Toward the product side is the correct and valid answer.
Equilibrium that occurs continuously with the same speed to the right and left is a characteristic of equilibrium dash. You chose dynamic, and it is correct. Choose the correct option. Nicely done. Proceed to the left is a solid answer. Which of the following pairs of changes in the reaction condition and direction in which equilibrium shifts is correct? Solid response. Addition of products reverse reaction is a valid choice. For chemical equation, please tell us which of the following pairs of factors affect the above chemical equilibrium shift. Perfect. Temperature and concentration is the correct choice. The equilibrium constant expression for the dissolving of a sparingly soluble compound is called the dash.
Clear logic. Your choice solubility product constant is sound and 100% true.
A type of chemical equilibrium where the reactants and the products of chemical equilibrium are present in different phases.
You got it. Your choice heterogeneous chemical equilibrium is right. Reversible reactions will reach chemical equilibrium when the dash of the forward reaction is equal to the reverse reaction. Well picked. Rate is the correct answer. As a reaction moves toward equilibrium, the concentration of the reactants dash, while the concentration of the products dash. You're right. Decreases. Increases is the correct answer. Find the increase in equilibrium concentration of Fe3 plus ions if O ions concentration decreases to 15/4 in the following reaction.
Smart pick. 64 times is the correct choice.
This symbol indicates that a reaction is strong choice. Reversible is the right answer. Which chemical species is the reactant and why? Valid point. A, as concentration decreases, is true. At what time the reaction reached dynamic equilibrium?
Nice work. You chose come on, and it is correct.
The following factors affect the position of equilibrium except he. Correct response. States of matter is the most accurate answer. At approximately what time is equilibrium established? Well done. 5 seconds is the right choice. Predict the color of solution if more Fe3 plus added to an equilibrium system. Well reasoned. Blood red is the correct choice. The system in the above graph reaches equilibrium closest to dash second. Nice selection. 1 is the correct and valid answer. Which of the two graphs shows a reaction trigger reactions that reach equilibrium? Excellent. Both of them is a brilliant choice.
What happened to the position of equilibrium system when the concentration but to increase?
Good thinking. Forward reaction is the right answer. The study of how chemical reactants generate products and products regenerate the reactants.
Nicely done. Chemical equilibrium is a solid answer.
In this image, what are the information to the right of the arrow is called the dash. Right again. Product is a valid answer.
The picture shows a reversible chemical reaction taking place. How can equilibrium be reached?
Exactly. Stop of the flask makes sense, and it is right choice.
An increase in temperature will shift the equilibrium of the following reaction toward the dash.
Good job. Reactants works well here.
Consider the reversible reaction shown. Which of the following relationships must be correct when the system is at equilibrium?
Right choice. 2-2 is the best answer. How you will get all these quiz questions in PDF books format? Perfect. Contact Narayan Changda is the correct choice.